Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Francesca Zampollo and welcome to this live webinar on food design. I am the founder of the online School of Food Design, and for this, I think, 8th webinar, our guest from Colombia is going to be Lucas Posada, if I pronounce that correctly, hopefully. Here he is. And very shortly, we are going to give him this digital virtual stage, and we're going to talk about intuitive cooking or Cocina Intuitiva, which is the name of his thing that he put together. I think this webinar is going to be very, very inspirational. Lucas has had a wonderful path journey that led him to do what he's doing today, but I will let him talk about it. I think this webinar is going to be, again, a very interesting. His story is beautiful. The story of what he is doing and the meaning of what he is doing, I think, is very commendable, and I can't wait to hear it again. For all of you, if you join us here live, don't hesitate to come in the chat room and tell us where you're from. I'm in Italy at the moment, and Lucas is in Colombia. Where are you from? From where you are connecting? Let us know. And of course, during the webinar, if you have any questions, just shoot them in the live chat room. If you are watching this as a replay and you have questions, don't hesitate to leave your questions as a comment below this video on this YouTube page. And so I will answer myself or find a way to get the answer to Lucas and get Lucas to answer to you directly. This is it. I'm very excited for me to be here. This is our last webinar for this second series. The third series will be in September, October 2018, and I'm looking forward to see you there. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Lucas Posada. Lucas, tell us who you are. Tell us what led you to be interested in food design, or in the aspect of food design that you are particularly interested in, and tell us about Cocina Intuitiva.
Right. So first of all, thanks for having me here, Francesca. It's a pleasure for me to be able to share, I guess, this journey of this path, which is taking me into amazing directions. So as you introduced myself before, my name is Lucas Posada. I'm from Colombia, and I guess I have worked in many different disciplines throughout my life, such as marketing, digital strategy. I also work with creative teams, and as a university teacher, I'm a biologist by profession, and now I'm a cook, right? So I guess it's just a mix of ingredients and flavors and knowledge that brought me to where I am. I guess as a food design thinker, I started a project called Cocina Intuitiva, which I guess translates to intuitive cooking. And this project is about experiential learning. And this experiential learning is a food project that seeks to rescue, document, and amplify almost forgotten Colombian foods and traditions. And in Colombia is very important for these things to happen because you know, if you think about Colombia, it's a country that has been in war for many years, and people have been displaced from the countryside. So a lot of this knowledge is being forgotten about how to work the land, our traditions in terms of food. So this is part of the things that I'm trying to do.
Sorry, yes, I had my microphone off. Brilliant, thank you so much. What is, and this is a question that I like to ask everybody, and I'm sure you too get asked this question very often, but I like to collect answers to this question. So I want to ask you immediately, what is your definition of food design? And I guess maybe what is the connection between food design and the Cocina Intuitiva?
Yeah, I mean, I see food design as a tool or a set of tools and principles that can help me to come up with food-related ideas and projects, right? But for me, there's another element there. which is the one I value the most. And for me, there's no food design without a purpose, right? And when I say a purpose, I don't mean a measurable business objective. What I mean is a broad purpose that is linked to your passions, right? And for me, for the benefit of the planet. And I didn't study food design. I just happened to know design thinking because of my previous professional experiences. And then I started seeing that there was food being applied or being part of this methodology that I used pretty much in my everyday professional life. So I started using these food design thinking methodologies. Uh, but like I say, yes, it's a methodology. It has a bunch of stuff and questions that help you, to do whatever you need to do. But for me, it's incomplete if you don't have a purpose, right? So if you ask me what is my own definition of food design, is applying these principles that everyone has a different, I guess, label for it. Everyone will say that they have their own methodology, and design thinking is huge. And yes, you can find that, you can Google it, you can go to university, but it's incomplete if you don't have a purpose.
For which university really doesn't do a lot, does it?
Well, I guess that's a personal journey.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think my next question, is, you probably have already given a hint to it, but I mean, I think from my perspective at least, what do you think that food design can do? In other words, what is the power of food design, or what is the one thing that only food design as a discipline can do and no other discipline can?
I guess that food is transversal to all. We all need food regardless of who we are, our race, location, religion. And I guess we can all connect through food. There is no discipline, at least not that I'm aware of, that uses such a, I guess, primordial and tangible connection like food. So the question is, are food designers being designed with a grand purpose? Are we thinking about these big issues that food can help or serve as a vehicle to bring a message and to create change? So for me, I guess food design can do a lot, right? But it has to be in the right hands.
Definitely, absolutely. As you were saying, I mean, definitely food. It's potentially um, potentially universal in a way, or a huge subject, because food is both a need, right? We need to eat 2 or 3 times a day, and a luxury, a pleasure, and everything in between. So we can create both, and sometimes we put together both things. So I completely agree with what you're saying. Well done, well said, definitely.
Thanks.
So before we move forward and before we really get stuck into what Cocina Intuitiva is and what you are specifically doing for this discipline and for this planet, if I may say so, what is the topic that thrills you the most? What is the thing that you are happy to wake up for which you are happy to wake up in the morning and go to work and go do it?
Food as medicine. I think it's a layer of information that gravitates around food that no one, apparently, it's in your face that we need food to survive, but also food is medicine. So for me, that's the topic that thrills me the most. And I think this is what brought me to food design in the first place. I have been working and learning from indigenous medicines, both in Colombia and in Australia with Aboriginal people, and have found that there is no distinction between food and medicine. It is seen as the same thing for these communities. So these two concepts are interlinked. And when I studied food as medicine, then I realized that food was this powerful thing that we all had, and it could help you with your everyday life, your health, and that's what kind of, I think that's my responsibility, to not only design food that nourish your body and looks good and tastes amazing, but also, you know, it helps you with your health, and it also a soul thing, right? Food is not just like a biological thing that is a necessity. Yes, that's one part, but there's also this intangible human memory around food that also helps as medicine, you know. And there's people who requires a psychologist instead of pills. So I think for me, food has to bring a message of healing, and not just for you, for the animal, for the planets, and so on. So the topic that thrills me the most is food as medicine.
Yeah, I love it, and I completely agree with you. And we both know, and many for sure in the audience know that this can be quite a controversial topic, talking about food as a medicine. But you know, um, uh, it can be very controversial. But let's just say that there is nowadays a huge amount of research, scientific, empirical research, quantitative research that demonstrate that food is literally a medicine for your body, that food heals, and you can heal with food alone. Um, there is a variety of reasons why we don't hear enough of this, but so in that sense, this topic can be very controversial. But what I really like about your answer, and I actually never thought about that, is that not only ingesting food as a medicine can be healing, but the making of food can be healing. The experiencing of a food is can be healing, and everything that is around the preparation of food, from probably agriculture, from production to cooking, preparation, serving, etc. And I really like this concept. And I now that, because I already know a little bit about Cocina Intuitiva, now that you said that, everything is clicking for what you're going to tell us in a little bit. So now it's really time to get into that. The first question that I kind of want to use as an introductory question to Cocina Intuitiva is asking you about your view of food as a language. And it comes from, of course, our previous conversation, where I got the impression that for you, food really is a language, a little bit metaphorically, but a little bit literally also. So tell us a little bit about that and your view about this.
Yeah, in a way, food is like music. You don't need to understand the language in which this music is being sang to be able to get the rhythm and dance, right? So I see, same with food. You don't need labels or tags to be able to try and taste foods, right? So for me, there's a language there that is not spoken, right? And it's beyond our linguistic capabilities. It does something different. It has to do with our senses, and we're connected to food in a fundamental way. And this was an insight that I gained back in Melbourne. So I just gonna bring up some images to share with everyone about so that everyone can see what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
so
we can.
yep. So when I was in Melbourne, so I lived 10 years in Australia before I came back to Colombia, and the project started there, right? I was in Melbourne, and you know, I was debating whether I needed to do some volunteer work or just get to do something different in my life. I was working in a corporate field, and I just felt that I needed to do something. So I volunteer in this refugee community center, and they asked me, okay, yeah, sure, we need volunteers. What would you like to do? And back then, Cocina Intuitiva didn't exist. Yes, I guess I cook something, but I wasn't a really great cook. But then I thought, okay, maybe I can share with these people who are refugees and they're part of this community center about something Colombian, right? Like a Colombian recipe, a Colombian traditional dish. So I said to them, okay, I'll cook something. I'll cook something, and I'll show them how to make it. And before, a couple of days before the actual workshop or the cooking class, I realized that these people may not have uh, English as their first language, and maybe they didn't know how to speak English yet, right? If they are refugees, most likely they just came to the country and they're just finding their way. So I had to, in a way, change my approach. How would I explain and instruct people about how to create this complex dish without being able to communicate with them, at least with language, spoken language? So I decided to, instead of, I guess, sharing with them a traditional Colombian dish, just to put down a bunch of foods, right? And these foods were all different colors. And I asked people to come and, well, I didn't ask them. I would just, each I guess each food had a chopping board in front of them, and I just let people come in and see me doing some chopping, and with my body language, just invite them to, I guess, resonate with any of those foods that they were on the table and start chopping and doing whatever they needed or they wanted to do. And this I guess this display of fresh fruits and veggies in all colors was really was calling them, I guess. So people started chopping and transforming the foods the way they wanted, and I guess each people brought with them parts of the culture and own relationship with food, and they just just did whatever they wanted to do. I didn't say anything. But in the meantime, because I was with my wife back then, we prepared some rice and beans and some sauces, right? And we also have some edible containers for people to use. So we have some corn tortillas, we had some lettuce leaves, and I think we also had some betel leaf. And uh, what I guess when everyone finished with their food, we just served ourselves something. We grabbed some chopped tomatoes by this person who chopped the tomatoes, and a bit of this, a bit of that, and people just follow through. They grabbed like one of these edible containers, a corn tortilla or a lettuce leaf, and they just started, just doing whatever they wanted. Just they chopped something, and there was a bunch of things, and they just started creating their own things and interacting just by trying the foods. And then we thought, oh, so I forgot to mention, we also printed some prompts. So as you can see on the screen here, we printed some prompts about like foods in all different colors, because we thought colors would be really nice for people to, I guess, to relate with. And at the end of this experience, we people creating their own dish, and it was just a really positive experience. So we thought about it later, and then we came to the conclusion that this was intuition kind of helped them to interact with these foods and create their own foods without having to have an instruction or recipes. So that's how we I guess how we created this, how Cocina Intuitiva started.
Brilliant. So, since you just mentioned them, I want to move straight into that. And so, tell us now about how these interactive dinners came about and how you transformed the concept that came about with this workshop into a series of events.
Sure. I'm gonna bring some slides again, because I think the images will help along with my with what I'm gonna say. So I guess Cocina Intuitiva started back in Melbourne after we did this workshop. I started talking with chefs over there, and we did some pop-up dinners, and I got really into cooking and learning from different chefs. And it was a time to come back to Colombia for us. And so we decided to continue the project here, but we decided to do a different thing, not only to have a pop-up dinner, but to be interactive and to be pedagogic. So our interactive dinners are experiential learning spaces where people who don't know each other come to taste foods that are related to Colombian, almost forgotten culinary traditions, like I said before. They also participate and co-create content responding to food challenges and games. And for instance, in this image, this is part of what I'm saying about almost forgotten foods. These are native potatoes that are grown in Colombia, but are not commercially available. As you can see, these potatoes are purple inside or yellow, and they have different shapes. So this is kind of like our native seeds. So we've been working with farmers to be able to get these seeds and show it to people, bring it to people.
So this would be
So
potatoes that only like a few people would grow for themselves, and you
yeah,
wouldn't. These wouldn't be sold in the market.
yeah, they are
Right.
not they are not commercially available. So
Right.
you cannot go to the supermarket and buy these potatoes. You buy the commercial potatoes,
Right.
same as the ones you buy
In
in
Australia.
Italy, in Australia, in the States. These
Yeah.
are native potatoes, and
Beautiful.
there are thousands of these
Yeah.
native potatoes, and they're different. They have different texture, different colors, and sure, they have different nutritional profile and so on. So people come to these dinners in part because they want to try these almost forgotten ingredients, but also to interact, right? And this is the part that it gets really excited for people, because uh, we we um, we help people share stories. So we have a basket, as you can see there. This is just one of our interactive experiences. And the basket invites people to get a piece of paper that has a question. And this question is for them, right? And it could be something as simple as, if you can choose your last meal, what would it be? And yes, we can all think about these things, and it could be easy to answer, but you are with another 20 or 15 people. So you have to open up, right? You have to open up and to share this intimate kind of food relationship. And to our surprise, when we ask people to think about what will be their last meal, it's not about a fancy meal. It's not about this exotic ingredient and caviar or whatever. It's just plain and simple, I guess, home food, right? And this is really interesting, because people start sharing about, they just want some baked potatoes with this with arepa, or whatever. It's just simple foods, and so people open up. And apart from these questions, we also have or design some interesting, I guess, design thinking tools to allow people to, I guess, to measure and map their food experience in a different way. So right now on the screen, there's one of example, which before we serve a traditional Colombian dish, we show them this little exercise that asks them to map the flavors of whatever they are going to eat. And so this basically asks them to rate how salty from 0 to 10 the dish is, or how citrusy, or how bitter, or how sweet, right? So I often say the example of honey, how sweet honey is. And people say, from 0 to 10 is 10. But then I said, I've tried things that are, sweeter than honey. So for me, it's an 8. But there's no right or wrong. Everyone can do as they please. And it's a very simple exercise. But then when we share in a group about how bitter it was, and someone says, I think it was not that bitter, I just mark it as a 2. And then someone says, oh, hang on, for me it was super bitter, for me it was 6. And then these contrasts create a debate. and then people understand how, food is very personal, right? And that's fine, and that's what we want people to understand. This is one of the questions. The question says, if you could choose, what would be your last meal? Which was the example that I explained before. As part of this interactive dinner, we also create some, I guess, explorative scenery to help people identify these foods. In this example, we put some little labels on food. So the exercise is to, from the basket, get a piece of paper, and the piece of paper will have a number. So they'll need to come to this exploratory scenery and to find this number. So for instance, I got 4, so I come to this scenery, and then I have to find number 4. Number 4 is this ingredient that is there, right? So first of all, we ask people to identify this ingredient, and some of them are really easy, like corn, but others, like this one, sweet potato. Sweet potato is very common outside, overseas, but in Colombia, it's not very well known, but is a native ingredients from the Americas. So it's really interesting and to see how people don't even recognize the things we have here. So not only they have to recognize and tell everyone, okay, I think this is blah, in this case, this is sweet potato, but also what would you do with it, right? Because I don't want to be the one who is creating all the content. I want people to share their food ideas and relationships. So for instance, one can say, oh, I can chop it and bake it. Others will say, oh, I can boil it and then I'll blend it with some flour and I make some pancakes. So all these different food preparations start to come up, and it's a really, really nice experience. Same here, there's on the background, you can see part of the scenery with all the numbers and all these different ingredients. And we tend to choose ingredients that are native, but also ingredients that have come from overseas, like cauliflower, for instance. So it's a really nice, I guess, way to get people interacted. Another thing that we do for these interactive dinners is that we give people prompts to serve their own food preparations. So this was an inspiration from back in Melbourne, where people kind of use colors as part of their, I guess, food design process. So I don't know if you guys can see that this transparent dish, on the background, it has a circle with a bunch of colors. So we give people these circles, and then we ask them to approach a table that is full with different fruits and vegetables and ice cream and a bunch of things that relate to different colors. So the exercise here is to, I guess, to challenge people to create a plate based on colors, not based on labels. None of these ingredients that are laid on the table have labels, right? So they, if 30% of that circle is yellow, then the challenge is to create a dish that has 30% yellow foods, right? So they they get to try things that they never tried because they were prompted in a different way, right? So this is part of the interactive dinners. And yeah.
I love it. I think, these are beautiful. I'm so happy we're doing this. I'm so happy you're sharing all of this with us. So my next question, I think you hinted on it, but I want to talk about intuition now. What do you think, what is for you the role of intuition in cooking in general? So, as for us people who cook, people who are going to make dinner tonight or lunch or wherever you are in the world, people who are going to cook, what is the role of intuition in somebody's life when it comes to cook? And then specifically, what is the role of intuition in Cocina Intuitiva? How did you take intuition and how did you start playing with intuition? And my guess is, of course, in a way that people interact with food and with each other.
Yeah, I guess intuition is so hard to define. I think language, we don't have enough language to define intuition, because it's something that is inside. For me, besides the academics and I guess read on books and stuff, for me, intuition is kind of like a superpower that we all have, but not everyone is connected to it. It's something that you need to develop. I often use a different term to define intuition, and it is in Spanish, but I'm going to try to translate. And the term that I use is senti pensando. So senti pensando is the act of sensing and thinking, and then acting accordingly to those, I guess, type of powers that we have. We can all think, we can all sense, right? But often these are separate. These are, they're going in different directions. So for me, senti pensando is, uniting them both. And for me, that's where intuition has a powerful, I guess, thing to help you navigate life. So for me, in a way, is making use of our rational brain as well as our sensing capacity, and to put them to work in unison. It's like fusing the two to take ownership, in this case of your food relationship, right? It's allowing food to take an active and participatory role in your own way, and your own way about life. And it's more about listening to your own body and knowing yourself, and then using that information to cook. And this is intuition, the role of intuition in cooking. And some people don't listen to your body. We all have this tool, but some people don't listen to their bodies, and they overeat, or they just go, they starve before they eat, things like that. And very simple things, you can sense and listen to your body, and then use it accordingly. Also, I guess, in terms of intuition, in the role of intuition in cooking, is intuition invites experimentation, right? It's something so personal, and no one tells you about how it is. It requires experimentation, which I find very valuable as a catalyst for improving your cooking skills. In a way, experimentation releases you from the chains of recipes. It makes you way more recursive and inventive with your own relationship with food, and with cooking for yourself and for others.
And what? How do you use intuition in Cocina Intuitiva, or are you going to talk about this later?
No, we can talk about it now. So we often tell people that using recipes is, I guess, is opposite to what we're trying to do with Cocina Intuitiva. Cocina Intuitiva, I guess, invites people to be very recursive with what they have. So for us, is more about, home cooks, right? We're talking about home cooks. We're not sharing this with professional cooks. Yes, they may come, but this is more for like everyday people. And we often find that when you follow recipes, your brain gets into this state where you follow step by step something that is already written, and it doesn't take into consideration where you are, your own relationship with food, how you feel about this ingredient and that ingredient. Are you sweet or are you salty? That kind of thing. So we said, let's park that, put it on the side, and let's just be inventive with what they have. So sometimes we display foods, and we ask people to share, okay, what would you do with this? What kind of things would you do, right? Just be inventive, and because it's something so personal that is so hard to define. It's more about giving them these spaces where they can experiment. And that's why we like to prompt them. For example, with the colors that I just mentioned before, it's just a different way for them to tune in with food, right? From a different perspective. And for me, the only way I can get people to be intuitive with cooking is to move away from recipes and labels, and just interact with food with your senses. That's about it.
Brilliant. I love it. With your senses and with your body, as you said before, I really like this thing that we are that you pointed out, that we are forgetting to use our body as a as a as a sensor, right? As something that from which you're going to take information. Love it. Okay, so from when we talk together, and from a couple of the things that you said before, I have a sense that for you in these events that you organize, it's very important for to tell the story of food or the ingredients that you present, and in a way to tell the story of what they are, and also of the particular geographic or cultural area where they're from. So tell us a little bit about these. What is the importance? Why is it important to talk about the almost forgotten food, and what is their story? Why is it important to share their story?
Yeah, let me just, I want to bring up some slides that I have here. Um, can you see it? Yeah.
Yep.
I'm just gonna go full screen. Right.
Perfect.
So before I move on to the next slide, I just want to, I guess, when people come, this is perhaps what people value the most when they visit us to our interactive dinners. Yes, we cook food and we try to make it as tasty and healthy as possible and to share these stories, but we are not professional cooks or chefs, and people know that. And we talk about we are not professional cooks or chefs, um, and I guess what we offer is the story of these foods, the people who worked on the farms to grow it, the people who decided to fight against these GMO seeds and are guarding these native foods, and we show them as superheroes. But superheroes that are not like the superheroes that we see in the movies, superheroes that are poor and that need our help to keep fighting for their cause. And so we in a way we try to make the ordinary extraordinary. So I'm just gonna give you an example. So these are native foods that we find in the Andes of Colombia, in the south of Colombia. So there's a bunch of different potatoes, native potatoes, and through our I guess research and field research, we've come across with these farmers who are growing the commercial potatoes, and that they have native seeds that they've been guarding and for their own use because their grandmother used to cook with it, and they just do it for a personal reason, right? But these farmers, they sell 1 kilogram of potatoes for 0.014 USD dollars. So that's not even a cent, right? So it looks like nothing. But then the distributor who buys these potatoes from the farmer at this low price, they sell it for about 1 USD dollar. So the discrepancies are huge. Something is happening. The people who are growing these foods, who are in who are defending our native foods, who are making these huge efforts to harvest these foods, to put it in baskets, very heavy, take it to the market. They're not getting their fair cut. And this is what part of the, I guess, we're trying to, this message we're trying to share with people, because people in the cities, they know nothing about this thing. They don't know nothing about what's happening in the countryside. They just know that they go to the supermarket and they buy these potatoes for $1. But then when you go backwards and you get to know these farmers and you look at their hands and you look at their, they're sweating, they're tired, they're doing this magnificent work for us and they're getting nothing for it. So this is part of what we're doing. We are, we're bringing this, we're making people sensible to these kind of things. And that's how we show them as a superhero. So that's why it's so important for us, not just to talk about how to make these traditional foods, right? How to cook them, their technique, but also the ingredients. who are native to Colombia and who are being forgotten, and the people who are behind growing this ingredient.
Wonderful. Yeah. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, good. I love it. I think this makes so much sense, and I love the fact that there's somebody in the world doing the work you do. And what I was thinking is that your work is a magical example of how food design can highlight that what we can do is more than cooking and restaurants and the mass-produced food and the places where we can go and touch things and design new things, products, services, etc. Is more than restaurants and the food industry. Project like yours, I think, remind us, and most importantly, young food designers who are about to take a journey into this amazing discipline, that food is more than all of these. It's knowledge, it's preservation, it's culture. Food is agriculture, and lost agriculture. And food is a language, as you said before. Food is intuition, skills, learning. Food is connection. Food is a language between us and the people who are growing those foods with those hands, and nobody talks about them. And food is a language, as you said before in the beginning, between us and the planet, right? Food is a way, literally, to tell the planet, we see you, we are here, and we are going to protect you. And I love what you do.
Thanks.
So, before I get too emotional, I want to ask you, because from what we talked about previously, I have a sense that it is very important for you to, and from what you said now, also, it's very important for you to present food that is authentic, right? But you also want to present food that is authentically prepared by those who really know that food. So I want you to tell us a little bit about this now. Why is it important for you to have the right hands that are going to produce this food? And do you think it is important that others take inspiration from this? And please, food designers out there, listen, because this is, I think, really a learning platform for all of us. And also, what have you learned from this process? What have you learned by bringing in those hands who really know the food?
Yeah, I guess, first of all, you have to be in context as to our story of place. Colombia has a history of violence and home displacement and war. So people living in the countryside, harvesting what they'll eat and knowing how to cook it was displaced, right? Because of the war. And throughout generations, this intangible knowledge is getting lost. So we think that big challenges like food insecurity, biodiversity loss, climate change, and public health can benefit from this almost forgotten traditional knowledge. So in our I guess research, we found crops that are almost forgotten that have huge potential for people and the planet. For instance, there's one called chacha fruto. This is a tree, a big tree, that has these pods that are full with seeds, kind of like beans, right? But they're gigantic. And this is a native tree in Colombia that used to be food, and our grandfather used to feed from these seeds. But not only us, but also they produce a lot of nectar for all the insects that are pollinizing. They're also, because there are legumes, they fix nitrogen in the soil, so they feed the earth, and it feeds everyone. But this chacha fruto is almost forgotten. Only few people in Colombia keep growing this chacha fruto. I had the pleasure of knowing some of these people who've shared with me how to open the pods, how to cook the seeds, different ways they used to prepare. There's another crop called ocas. So this is kind of like a potato, but it's different because the okas are from a different plant. And what's beautiful about okas is that they're very pest resistant, way more than potatoes, and they tolerate extreme weather, and they give okas all year long. So this is another food that is still a bit common in the Andes, but people in Colombia in general, they don't know about these foods. And other food that we found is the árbol del pan. I think it will translate to breadfruit. I understand this is native to all tropical regions in the world, different varieties. We have one here, and this is a beautiful tree that had these gigantic, almost like jackfruit seeds, and then you can eat the flesh of the fruit or the seeds by cooking them, and it's delicious, and it's so easy to grow, and even like walk, like when I walk in the city, I see these trees, and this fruit is, no one knows that you can eat this sort of stuff. So for us, that's why it's important to talk to these people who are the ones who actually know them, who share, who has this knowledge, and to give them a platform to be listened and valued. So because of this reason, we started a program that invites people to rescue these traditions from home. So let me explain this. In Colombia, it's very normal for people living in the cities to have maids to help them with cleaning and cooking in their homes. That's very common in Colombia. I know this is not very common in other places, but in Colombia, it's common that people living in the city, they pay someone to come to their house to clean and cook for them, right? And it turns out that these people who come to your house to clean, often they are people who have been displaced from these countryside parts of Colombia, and they are here, trying to make a living. And we had the experience with one maid who used to come to work to help us with the house 1 day a week. And once we were having lunch, and I decided to ask her about her childhood flavors. And she started to tell me about all these things that I never tasted, and all these traditional preparations that I knew nothing about. And then something happened, and I realized that just by asking the right questions to these people, we can start rescuing these foods from home without having to go to a remote area in Colombia. It's just you can do it from home. So from that reason, we started this program, which we launched about. We've been doing the program for about 6 months, where we have this interchange with mates who wants to come to our cooking lab and to have these kind of sessions. But we launched officially a few weeks ago through a newspaper that is called Vivir en el Poblado. It's a free publication newspaper. This is what you see on the screen, is the web version, but it's an actual physical paper that invites people in their homes to ask these maids about these foods that they may know of. And instead of asking them to cook lasagna for lunch, lasagna is great, I don't have anything against lasagna, but instead of asking them to cook lasagna for lunch, let's ask them, what would you like to cook? Let's cook something that that reminds you of your childhood. And maybe they'll cook something delicious that you never tried before. So that's why it's so important for us to actually talk to these people, to rescue these flavors and knowledge from home, which I think is very important, because everyone, pretty much everyone, or at least the people we're trying to connect with, they have a home, and they have all the tools in it to be able to make this change. So for me, it's very important that it's something that is super easy to do, so that people can do it.
Brilliant. So basically, you're not only inviting these people, these ladies, to cook at your events, but you're also beginning this type of a program that reminds house owners to ask these people to cook that food for them at home, right? Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, exactly. To ask them to cook something that resonates with them, that is linked to their memories and things that they used to cook back in home when her mother was alive, or this recipe that the grandmother used to cook. And these people, these mates who are coming to help you clean your house, they come from these areas where this type of knowledge is being forgotten.
Definitely. I mean, I love it. It makes so much sense. And I just imagine the sense of pride that these people might feel in cooking their food for the people they work or anyway in the city, right? Just the sense of pride to cooking their food anyway, but to cook their food to people who have never had it, to cook that food to people in a city who we can imagine are forgetting more and more quickly about these recipes that are maybe they come from smaller villages, etc., smaller town, etc., and other parts of Colombia, I guess. So this is beautiful, and thank you so much. It makes so much sense, and I love it. I just love it. Well done. So, what has been so far your greatest challenge in putting together this project? But also maybe what has been your most rewarding moment?
Okay, let's start by the greatest challenge, because this is something that I'm still trying to solve, I guess. And I think the greatest challenge is to operate in Colombia, right? Um, the taxes here are very expensive for startups, and that makes things somewhat complicated for us. But also, to bring products from the countryside, from these farmers who are growing these native foods, is very expensive, and it's unreliable. Our infrastructure is not quite there yet. But all these reasons are secondary to my biggest challenge, which is people don't care, right? And this is something that I guess maybe we all struggle with our own projects. And for me, is that people don't care much, at least in Colombia, we don't care much about our own culture. We always like to look to what's coming from outside, what's happening outside the world. And I guess that maybe is because of our past, a lot of violence, and maybe people wanted to leave Colombia because of that, right? And it's gradually changing, but uh, the reality is that Colombians are more interested in what's coming from overseas than the things coming from our own land. And I understand where they're coming from, but I'm trying to change that. So that's why it's so important for us to not only rescue this tradition and these dishes, but to present them in a different way, in a way that looks modern and is innovative, and it has this part of food as medicine, which is important for us. And I think that's how we're trying to seduce people to try these foods. Because if I serve them as they usually were, I guess you have to be culturally ready to accept that dish. But if I put them in a different way, with colors and plating and more modern and cool, then people will start talking about it and they want to eat it. So for me, it's important to have the traditional knowledge, but also to apply innovation. So that changes. I have a slide that I just want to show you about what I imagine this to be, because it's sad, but at the same time, I think it's a huge potential. So this is basically what's happening, and this a couple of examples just to put you in context as to why people think the things that are coming from outside are better. So matcha, for example, matcha is just green tea made into a powder. When I was in Australia, it was very popular. You'll find matcha coffee and matcha pancakes and matcha everything. Basically, it's just something that makes food looks green, right? And this is imported, right? This is a premium product that is imported, and only people that have money can purchase this sort of thing. And it's expensive and coming from overseas. But we have a local and cheap matcha, which is not matcha. It's made out of the coca leaf. So coca is not cocaine, just to make sure. Coca is the plant that is used to make a bunch of traditional indigenous foods, and also, unfortunately, cocaine. But you find this, it's called mambe. So the coca leaf is dried and then made into a powder, and it kind of looks like matcha. And I've been reading about all these different properties that it has, and it's probably one of the best superfoods, but it's a taboo and it's illegal. At least cocaine is illegal, but coca leaf not in Colombia. It's not illegal in Colombia, but we have this local cheap alternative. So I've been, instead of doing the coffee matcha, I do the coffee coca, and instead of doing the matcha waffles, I do the coca waffles, and I in a way I force people to try these foods when they come to our interactive dinners, because we don't have labels when we serve food. We don't say people, hey, here is blah 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 blah. We don't say that. We say, hey, here's something you wanna eat, and then without saying anything else, they eat it, and they allow their body to, I guess, be the judges of, like, I this food was really nice, or I didn't like it. But then I use a lot of mambe, which is this coca leaf, or the equivalent to matcha here. And some people, when we say, oh, you just ate coca, they freak. But I explain to them, this is being our native, is a traditional food, and native people in Colombia have been using it for millennia. It has all these properties, but they never try. It's a taboo here. Another example is kombucha. Kombucha is very, very popular. It's amazing. I know how to make kombucha, but we also have a lot of fermented probiotic drinks that are native to Colombia, made out of local ingredients. Kombucha is made out of tea. We don't have any tea here. We don't grow tea. All the tea has to come. But we do have ingredients that are used to make chicha, which is a fermented drink that indigenous people has been preparing for millennial, and is made out of corn. It can be made out of beans. It can be made out of potatoes, made out of a bunch of things. So I imagine a Colombia where people know more about chicha, this native fermented drink, than kombucha. But right now is the opposite. When you go to Instagram and you look at all these foodies, they all talk about kombucha, kombucha, kombucha. They know nothing about our own fermented drinks. So this is part of the challenge, but I also think is a huge potential. Right. So the second question, I think it was about the most rewarding moment, right? And this is linked to the program that we just spoke about, where we get mates to talk about the traditions. And one maid, one of these ladies who participated in our program, told us about how she was inspired by the project, and she realized that she had everything, as well as us, to start her own gastronomic project. So she started a business back in her neighborhood, where she has a multifunctional space where her husband do maintenance to motorbikes, and she delights clients with flavors from their childhood. So that was like this breakthrough moment where we realized that not only we are getting information from these ladies who are helping us with our products, but they are also getting something in return, because often they are not listened to. They just receive instructions to make things as other people want. But in this case, we ask them to give us this information. We appreciate what you're telling us, and somehow this inspire her to to start her own business or startup. And that I think that's been the most rewarding moment for me.
That's lovely. That's so sweet. That's lovely, and really goes back to what I was imagining before. What I was thinking about the sense of pride that these people might feel. Absolutely, aren't we? Aren't we here? Put? Haven't we been put on this planet just to be there for one another? Anyway, without getting too sentimentalistic, I was thinking about actually when you were talking about matcha and kombucha. I was thinking that whenever there is whenever marketing, and you can have your opinions about marketing, but whenever marketing tells us that there is this new amazing product that does millions of wonderful things for our health, which matcha and kombucha are an example. They are definitely fantastic natural things that do a lot of good. Then somehow the aspect of food as medicine, we could say, kind of, becomes more important than locality and the consequences to environmental sustainability that moving these products around the world do for this planet. And somehow, the fact that matcha is very good for my health becomes more important than the fact that matcha comes from freaking Japan, which is on the other side of the world with respect to Europe, for example. And so that it has to travel God knows how much. Anyway, maybe this is a topic for another webinar because, Having said that, I wanted to ask you. In the beginning, I asked you what can food design do. Now, I would like to get your perspective on the future, and I want to ask you, what should food design do? What do you think are the areas that food design should investigate, where food designers should go and think about and bring innovation, because only food design can?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that's a big question, and I'm not too sure if I can answer that correctly, but I'm going to do my best. I think food design should try and tackle challenges like food security. I mean, that's really important, and I'm from the perspective of Colombia. Biodiversity loss. We have all these foods that are being, have been brought to Colombia, such as coffee. Colombia is well known about the coffee, but coffee is not from here. It was brought by these rich people, and they cut all the forests to have this coffee. I love coffee, don't get me wrong, but it's not our native food, and it has an environmental impact in Colombia. So biodiversity loss is a thing. What can we? Yep, go on.
Yeah, no, I was just thinking that sometimes there are some products that it's amazing that we have the opportunities and the infrastructure to have them in our own countries, even if they're not natives. But somehow we shouldn't replace all the foreigner products and just forget about what we are growing. I mean, it's ridiculous. As the example of the potatoes that you were talking about, and I've heard about these a bunch of times now. It's an entire world with like two types of potato: the orange one, the sweet one, and the other with the thick skin and not thick skin. That's it. And even countries like Colombia and other countries in Latin America where potatoes are from, even you guys are forgetting about them. So it's great that we all can drink coffee, but right, we should not forget, as you're trying to say, about the product that we also grow.
Yeah, and also I guess another big challenge that food design should tackle is, it's for me it's traditional food knowledge being forgotten, right? And yes, I'm not against technology, I'm not against innovation. I think both should be working, right? And why I think people have been living on this planet, at least my grandfather, my ancestors here in Colombia, they have been living from the land for many, many years. They sure they have something important to share, right? But this is being forgotten, or people don't care, right? So I think this, and this, sure, it applies to everywhere in the world. So I think these problems, they need multidisciplinary people that are empathetic, they feel about these things, that are responsible. It's not just business. I guess if you do good job, money will come later, and quite creative. And I think that's what food designers are. They are empathetic, they are responsible, and they are very creative and multidisciplinary. I didn't study food design, but I consider myself as part of a food designer, right? And I guess I mentioned in the beginning that food is transversal to all, right? We all have to eat, regardless of who we are or race and stuff like that. And I believe that is the perfect vehicle for change and to tackle these big global issues. And I guess imagine something like this, Francesca, and for everyone who's there listening, who will be replaying this later. Imagine you go to a food shop, right? And you order a burger combo. You want a hamburger and some fries. Then the burger comes out without the fries, and then immediately you ask the waiter, "Hey, hang on, what about my fries, mate?" And then this waiter will say, "Oh, we were so sorry. There's no potatoes in the market anymore. Apparently, this climate change thing is actually affecting potato crops. There are no more potatoes, but hey, this is a serve of bread for your inconvenience." You'll be so sad, and so, I don't know, you'll be like, hang on, I can't eat a burger without chips. And imagine this message, right? If we manage to get a country or a big chain of hamburger to do this kind of thing, not because potatoes are no longer available, but just to bring the message to the masses, right? Food connects you. Once you don't have this type of food that you like, then you realize that, all right, the thing that everyone's been telling us about climate change is actually affecting me now. I can't taste these potatoes anymore. I want my burger with the fries. So I think this type of messages food design can bring.
Sorry, my mic was off. I love it. Thank you so much. So I think you probably touched upon it, but I mean, you just said before as well that you don't have a food design background, but I mean, who does? Nobody. I mean, just a bunch of people right now have formally studied food design, but and you ended up being a type of food designer, I would say, for sure. And you ended up, most importantly, starting your own business, your own thing around food design. So for all those people who are out there, and many of these people do follow this network that I have kind of created, what is your the number one advice that you have for those people? What is the number one advice that you would give to people who, like you, excuse me, like yourself, are now about to design the products or the services or the businesses of the future?
Okay, I guess two things. For me, you must have a personal purpose that means something to you, that makes you passionate about whatever it is. And then you should try and relate that purpose to one of those big issues, right? I think if you're going to do something food design related, maybe you'll start working with a food chain or whatever, but then you'll start coming up with your own ideas. That's when it gets really interesting, to have a personal purpose that is attached to any of these global issues that we talked about. But secondly, also, if you're food designers, make sure that you go out where food grows. You cannot be a food designer without growing food. You have to grow food, maybe in your apartment, and just go out and check it out. Like, food is there, it grows from the earth. You have to go there and check it out.
Definitely. I completely agree with you. Even a tiny basil plant in your kitchen counter, in your tiny skyscraper apartment or wherever you live, grow something. And as you said before, I think we agree on this. Don't be afraid of technology, embrace technology, but we should try and use as much technology as we can, so that technology can help us preserve things, preserve variety, preserve culture, preserve people, preserve everything. I love it. Okay. What is your hope? How do you hope to influence the world of food design in the future? What is the footprint that you hope you're going to leave?
Right. I'm gonna share my screen again. Excuse me. So this is fairly new. It's in the making, but I'm working on a methodology to design food without recipes, right? Um, as far as cooking goes, the academics are still teaching based on recipes, exact measurements, rules, and techniques, which is great and it has its own place. But I think we need to do things in different ways, just make things in a different way. And I think people, some people learn differently, and that's fine. And some people don't adapt to the way the academics tell us to learn. So I guess, and also talking about how academics talks about cooking and food, and it brings me to the word of chefs, right? And to me, like, and chefs are like an epidemic. I'm not saying I'm not. It's not nothing against chefs, but I'm just saying that the word chef is not even ours. The word chefs equals rules, army-like structure, and instructions, and it doesn't take into consideration other ways of doing it. It's like a military approach. So I
Yeah,
think,
I think it's like the French word for like boss, right? For like captain or something.
so someone studying in Colombia to be a chef, they're not gonna know anything about traditional Colombian preparations and foods, because it's not part of the structure. So I guess I would like to change that, and I think playing is a great way of learning. So I would like to have, I would like to be able to do something where cooking is a game, cooking as a game. So I've been working on this methodology, and I'm creating this. It's kind of like a role play game, and this is just in my mind. I'm not doing anything outside my mind yet. This game will have you play some roles where you have one stage, you have to be this traditional knowledge sharer, right? Which is something like this, and is this person or this role play, it equates to this person who remembers and revises flavors from the past. For me, it's important to rescue these traditions, knows how to share and teach traditions, and it recognize food in the wild. You'll be impressed with how many chefs don't know how the flower of a potato looks like, and that's terrifying to me, right? And this game will also have other roles, such as the cook, someone who's able to chop some things and fry some stuff, but also an alchemist, which is someone expert like in the flavor profile, who can change whatever the cook does, and the provocateur, which is someone who seduces the guest to try the foods in the way they design the space and the plating. There's also the host. When there's food, there's a host, and there's also a guest, and there's also other roles. So I imagine a game where where you sit down with a bunch of friends, such like a game board, and then the final product is just this delicious meal that you prepare by just playing. That's how I would like to influence food design.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Good luck to you. I'm sure you will succeed in your goals. And as soon as this becomes somehow tangible, or just let me know. Let me know, and I would love to know more about it. And maybe we can do another webinar where you can tell everything, where you explain to us everything about it.
And
So,
Francesca, can I just say or interrupt you for a bit?
definitely.
And this is like for everyone who's watching us live or who replay this later. If you're interested about this and you have ideas and you want to share with me or you want to co-create this thing, just let me know. I'm sure on the web page we'll have we'll leave our my email and my link to my profiles and things like that, because I'm serious about this and I want to create a game. But I'm also doing a bunch of other things, so I want it to be faster. So any designers or cooks or chefs, come and join me, and I guess we can all make it happen.
Sounds great. Absolutely. I will. Let me see. I think that. Oops. Okay. I think that down here in the description of this video, there is already the link to your Instagram page, which is your main communication page. And I love how you're keeping it simple without 100 accounts and websites. But definitely we'll be putting up your email address if you want as soon as possible.
Sure. Let's do that.
Definitely. So we are going to an end. We have to keep this short, well, relatively short, I guess, today. But so my last question really is, as those who have been following this webinar series, a question that I really love asking people. Is like a more of a personal question. To me, it sounds like a personal question because I know that the answer can be very personal and intimate at times. And it's again it started with this project that I started called In Search of Meaningful Food. So I've been ever since in search of meaningful food, in search of collecting stories of meaningful food. So what is your most meaningful food and why?
Okay, my most meaningful food, it's a dish that has a combination of foods that are corn, beans, and squash. But why, right? It turns out that there's this ancestral Native American technology called the Three Sisters. The Three Sisters is a way of growing food that uses different qualities of these plants to provide a higher yield while protecting the land. So when Spanish came to and discover the New World, they were impressed by not seeing a single crop field. They saw food forests, and native people here were growing food in a different way, in a way that was somewhat symbiotic. And one of these techniques, ancestral techniques, is called the Three Sisters. So the way it works is like this. We start by planting corn, right? Planting the seed of corn and letting it grow for about 15 centimeters. I think, as a matter of fact, I think I have some slides. So let me just do this again and I'll show people appreciate to understand this a bit more. And let's go to full screen. Yep, we got it. So, okay, so these are the three plants. We got corn, any type of bean, any type of squash. So the way it worked, the Three Sisters, this ancient growing technique is that we plant corn and we let it grow for about 15 centimeters. Then we plant the beans. So the beans will use the corn structure to climb and to be able to gather more sunlight, as well as feeding the soil. As I mentioned just a few questions before, the chacha fruto, which was this prominent food that is being forgotten, is a legume, same as with beans. They are able to fix nitrogen into the soil. So not only they use the corn to climb and gather some sunlight, but they also feeding the corn plant itself by fixing nitrogen. So once the beans and the corn are established, then we plant the squash. So the squash grows different from the beans and the corn. It grows very kind of close to the soil. And it has some big leaves that protects the soil from from erosion. So this technique is the three sister. So I was, you know, when I realized about this three sisters technique, and it's part of the ancestral knowledge that we have here, I was impressed, and I decided to make a dish to tell this story, which is part of what we do here in Cocina Intuitiva. And this is kind of like what we did. So this is just a representation of these three foods. So and it also had some more foods, and we've been I guess innovating about around this, but this was one of the examples that we've made. So it has the corn, which is, we have some corn preparations here that are called arepas. They're kind of like corn tortillas, similar to the tacos, corn tacos, but these are thicker. So we have the corn there, the yellow kind of liquid that you see. It's pumpkin, so it's kind of like a pumpkin soup. And there's this mountain of quinoa, and inside are these beautiful beans that are being slow cooked with achote, which is a natural native food coloring that we have, and a bunch of other things. So for me, this is probably the most meaningful food that I have, not only because it tastes great, but also because it has this story, and is trying to, I guess, safeguard this traditional growing technique of the three sisters.
Oh my God, I love it. It's so beautiful. I love it. It makes so sense. I had no idea. I've never heard anything like that. I guess now what we call permaculture is something that is, now we are going back, right? We have been growing things in a row because they are very practical for machines, etc. And now we're going back to permaculture. And I guess this is in the same storyline of permaculture, and it's a beautiful story. It makes so much sense. I love it. I love it. I love it. And thank you for sharing it with us. And actually, thank you for inspiring this. I think it would, you know what would be cool? I think it would be awesome to. Are there other three sisters combinations, or this is like the only three sisters combination that we know of?
No, there's many symbiotic I guess growing techniques here, and depends of if you are in the Amazon, in the Andes, you know, and it changes, but usually that's kind of like the is grounded around some type of cereal like corn or amaranth or quinoa, and then beans, or a legume that it could be any type of legume and any type of squash, but also has some other ingredients. So these kind of stories is, I guess, or knowledge is what we're trying to bring into this delicious food that we serve to people. And that's why we think people appreciate coming to our experiences so much, because it's not just about how it tastes. Hopefully it tastes nice, and I think it does, because people never complain about it. But it's not just about that. And this is what chefs are being told, is like, it has to taste nice and has to look good, regardless if it's fried, it's salty, or, yeah. And this is the kind of layer I think we're missing. And we as food designers, we can tackle that, and we can all cook. Just as you said, our body is a sensor, and we can use it to help us cook.
Definitely. I mean, undeniably, in whatever type of social situation you are, even if you cook just for yourself, if food doesn't taste good, it's likely that the whole experience is going to be a bit less good than it could be. So, kind of, in a way, food has to taste good. It has to be. It has to look good also, but that must not be the only thing. As you said, we're missing layer, and definitely we have been realizing this for a while. And I think, as you said, definitely this is the number one thing that food design should concentrate on. Brilliant. Okay, I love it. And you know what I was thinking? I was kind of thinking that this Three Sisters concept, which is beautiful and so filled with meaning, could be a trigger for some type of cooking competition that we should put together. And we only want recipes with three ingredients that are a documented Three Sisters combination or something.
We should definitely do it, and
right?
these ingredients are readily available everywhere. Everywhere has some type of beans, has some types of squash, and some type of corn. So it could be a worldwide thing, and it brings this beautiful message. And Francesca, I invite you to just Google Three Sisters Growing Technique or in your own language, and you'll find information. There's a mythological information behind that, and it's so meaningful, so deep, and it's beautiful. And then we can make out of it, and it tastes good and it's healthy. It could be plant-based, which I think is another. We didn't talk about plant-based design food, which I think is huge, and we should all do that, and we do it here. We don't serve any meat. So yes,
this is our next webinar, I think.
Yeah.
Food as medicine equal plant-based. Absolutely, totally agree with you.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, we have to finish here. Thank you, everybody, for coming here and joining us today with this webinar. For those of you who followed live, and of course for those of you who will be watching this as a replay. Of course, if you have any questions, you can contact Lucas directly. You have already the link to his Instagram page, but if you want, I think very soon we're going to put his email address also, or leave a comment in this YouTube video, and I will get the question to him and find a way for him to answer, no problem at all. And of course, thank you, Lucas, for taking the time, for being here with us today, for sharing these wonderful story of yours and your experience and your journey. And it doesn't matter where you start from, if your first degree is in biology or in finance or whatever your studies, you can end up being a food designer for sure. And I know many of you guys who are listening have a more interesting path, let's say, a most interesting journey. And to you, Lucas, I wanted to say that you mentioned that your biggest challenge is that people don't care about Colombian food. But my sense is, or my message to you maybe, is that it's actually thank you to people like you that people are going to care, that people are learning to care about food, the food that you have over there and the food that they have close by. It's thanks to people who are doing the type of work that you are doing, that more and more of us become aware, and in a way awaken a little bit, and awaken our sensitivity towards locality, and maybe you want to call it slow food, call it whatever you want. And of course, and also in your case, it's thanks to people like you that we have a chance to awaken our senses and our body as a messaging tool, as we were saying before, since food is language, a language that you can use with one another, and a language that we can use with our planet. I think this is beautiful. And I also want to emphasize once again the beautiful message that you have about your purpose, having a purpose. Design whatever you want, but have a purpose, have a passion, find that first. I think that's a very practical and essential advice to give anyone who is listening and wants to take this journey. So thank you, Lucas.
Thank you, Francesca.
And to everybody, I will see you for the next series, next food design webinar series, about September or October, more likely September. We're going to start this third series, so stay tuned on this YouTube channel, on the Online School of Food Design website, on my Instagram account, fooddesign_talk, or food design thinking, I don't remember, one of the two. And as always, have a lovely day and happy food design. Bye.